In Monroe County, Georgia, hunger didn't scream. It whispered. It lived in empty cabinets and watered-down meals. In the way children learn to eat slowly. In the way an 11-year-old boy learned to pretend he wasn't hungry at all. Miles Edwards walked home with his shoulders slightly hunched, not from the cold, but from habit. The kind you develop when you don't want to take up too much space in a world that barely notices you exist. In his hands was a white styrofoam container. Warm. Carefully balanced. It held fried chicken, collard greens, and cornbread, a meal so rare in his house that Miles had already planned how to survive on it for days. Half tonight. Half tomorrow. Maybe a few bites saved for Sunday. The container wasn't just food. It was security. Miles lived with his grandmother, Ethel Edwards, in a small blue house near the railroad tracks, the kind of house that creaked even when no one was walking. His mother had died 2 years earlier. Cancer. No insurance. No second chances. His father? Gone. Nobody talked about him anymore. That morning, Miles had woken up at 5:30 a.m. like always. He checked the cabinets first, not out of hope but out of routine. Half a box of oatmeal. 2 cans of beans. Bread starting to mold. So he cooked for his grandmother first. Used the last of the brown sugar for her bowl. His own. Plain oatmeal. Water. No complaints. Before leaving for school, he touched the silver cross hidden under his shirt, the only thing his mother left behind. "Watch over us today," he whispered. She never answered. But he always asked anyway. The walk home was quiet. Too quiet. The Sunoco station had been closed for years. A faded sign still thanked customers for 43 years of service, like the town itself hadn't noticed everyone leave. That's when Miles saw it. A silver sedan. Pulled off the road. Hood open. An older man pacing beside it. An older woman still inside, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Miles slowed. His instincts kicked in immediately. Don't stop. Don't get close. Don't let anyone misunderstand you. In this part of Georgia, a black boy approaching a stranded car, especially a white couple, could mean trouble. The kind that didn't end with explanations. 3 cars had already passed them. One slowed down. Then sped away. Another driver looked directly at Miles, then accelerated. Too poor. Too dark. Too risky. Miles felt his stomach twist, not just from hunger but from something heavier. The woman in the car was shivering. Her breath fogged the window. The sun was setting fast. Miles stood still. The food in his hands felt heavier with every second. He could walk away. No one would blame him. No one would ever know. But then he remembered his grandmother sharing tea with neighbors even when they barely had enough for themselves. He remembered his teacher telling him, "You matter even when the world acts like you don't." And he remembered his mother's voice, soft, steady, impossible to ignore. "You can't fix everything, Miles, but you can fix something." His stomach growled. Loud. He looked down at the styrofoam container. The only thing he had. Then he took a breath. And started walking toward the car. The old man noticed him first. His posture stiffened. Defensive. Wary. Miles stopped a few feet away. He didn't reach into his pockets. Didn't raise his voice. Didn't step too close. "Excuse me, sir," Miles said quietly. "Are you and your wife okay?" The man studied him. The thin jacket with no zipper, the backpack held together with safety pins, the hunger Miles tried hard to hide. "Car trouble," the man said cautiously. "We're waiting for help." Miles looked around. No houses. No lights. No signal bars on his phone. The woman stepped out of the car. She was shaking. That's when Miles made his decision. Not a calculated one. A human one. He opened the styrofoam container. Steam rose into the cold air. The smell of fried chicken filled the empty road. "Ma'am," Miles said gently, holding it out, "this is still warm. You should eat. It'll help you stay warm." The woman froze. The man stared. "Oh, sweetheart, I couldn't take your food," she said softly. Miles shook his head. "I already ate." It was a lie. His stomach tightened as he said it. The woman knew. She saw it in his eyes. And still, she accepted. Miles turned away before they could say anything else. "I'm gonna get help," he said. "There's a farm not too far." I run fast. And before either of them could stop him, he ran. Into the dark. Hungry. Cold. Alone. Miles didn't know that the man he just helped had spent 15 years searching for proof that goodness still existed. He didn't know that by morning, everything would change. All he knew was that 2 strangers needed help. And he did what he could. Welcome to Coziness Stories. If you enjoy calm, immersive stories like this, Take a moment to subscribe and make yourself at home. The road went quiet the moment Miles disappeared into the darkness. Not peaceful quiet. The kind that presses against your ears and makes you aware of every breath. Margaret Whitfield sat back inside the car, clutching the styrofoam container against her chest as if it might disappear. Her fingers were stiff, pale, almost bluish at the tips. "Harold," she whispered. Her husband didn't answer. He was still standing outside the car, staring down the road where the boy had vanished. The darkness swallowed everything past a few dozen yards. No street lights. No houses. Just road, trees, and cold. That boy had run into it. For them. Margaret opened the container slowly. The chicken was still warm. She broke off a small piece, hesitated, then took a bite. Her eyes closed. "Oh my God," she murmured. "Harold, this is good." Harold didn't smile. His throat felt tight. "That child gave us his dinner," he said quietly. Margaret nodded. "His only dinner." They sat in silence. A pickup truck roared past without slowing. Its headlights briefly illuminated the inside of their car. Margaret's thin sweater, Harold's worried eyes, then disappeared. "That's 4, Harold said. Margaret knew what he meant. 4 cars. For chances. For people who chose not to stop. She pulled her coat tighter around herself. "I don't understand," she said softly. "When did people get so afraid of each other?" Harold didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn keychain. 2 letters were engraved into the metal. DW. Margaret saw it and her eyes softened. "You're thinking about Daniel?" she said. Harold nodded. Their son had been gone 15 years. Congenital heart condition. Sudden. Unfair. The kind of loss that rearranged a marriage, a life, a worldview. Daniel had been like that boy. Always giving. Always noticing who needed help. Always stopping when others didn't. "He would have done the same thing," Harold said quietly. "He wouldn't have even thought about it." Margaret reached over and took his hand. "I know." The wind picked up. Margaret shivered again. Harold glanced down the road. Empty. No sign of Miles. Guilt crept into his chest. "What if something happens to him?" Harold said. Margaret swallowed. "He shouldn't have gone alone." "No," Harold agreed. "He shouldn't have." But the truth sat heavier than either of them wanted to admit. They hadn't stopped him. They had let a hungry child run into the dark for them. Miles ran. Not the kind of run you do in gym class. The kind you do when you don't want to think. Cold air burned his lungs. His sneakers slapped the pavement, loose soles flapping with every stride. His backpack bounced wildly, knocking against his spine. His stomach twisted painfully. Empty. He pushed harder. The farm was farther than he remembered. His legs started to ache. His breath came out in short, sharp bursts. A car passed him going the opposite direction. It didn't slow. Miles didn't wave. He kept running. Halfway there, doubt crept in. What if Mr. Earl isn't home? What if the truck won't start? What if I'm too late? He almost slowed down. Almost. Then he pictured the woman's shaking hands. He pictured his grandmother's arthritis, the way she rubbed her knees at night and never complained. He pushed harder. By the time he reached the farmhouse, his chest felt like it was on fire. The porch light was off. Miles ran up the steps anyway and knocked. Hard. Too hard. The door flew open. "Jesus!" a man shouted. Mr. Earl stood there in flannel pajamas, eyes wide. "Miles?" he said. "Boy, what on earth?" "Sir," Miles gasped, hands on his knees, "there's a couple stranded by the old Sunoco. No signal. The lady's cold. They need help." Mr. Earl didn't ask questions. He grabbed his jacket. "Truck keys are on the counter," he said, already moving. "Let's go." Miles climbed into the passenger seat, chest still heaving. "You run the whole way?" Mr. Earl asked. "Yes, sir." Mr. Earl shook his head as he started the engine. "You nearly gave me a heart attack banging on my door like that," he muttered. Then softer, "But you did right." Back on Highway 41, Harold saw headlights in the distance. They grew closer. A pickup truck pulled into the lot. Miles jumped out first, breathing hard, smiling. "You found help?" Margaret whispered. Tears welled in her eyes. Harold felt something shift deep inside him. A quiet, irreversible realization. This boy had done more for them in 30 minutes than most people did in a lifetime. The truck door slammed. Mr. Earl stepped out. "You folks the ones with the dead car?" "That's us," Harold said. Mr. Earl glanced at Miles. "This kid ran nearly 2 miles in the dark to get me," he said. "Scared the life out of me." Miles shrugged. I knock normal. Mr. Earl laughed. Son, you knock like the law. The jumper cables sparked. The engine coughed, then roared to life. Relief washed over Harold like a wave. He reached into his wallet without thinking and pulled out several bills. Please, he said, holding them out. For the trouble. For the boy. Miles stepped back immediately. No thank you, sir. Harold blinked. Son. I didn't do it for money. Harold stared at him. You ran into the dark. Gave away your food. And you don't want anything? Miles shook his head. My mama taught me kindness isn't something you sell. The words hit harder than Harold expected. For a moment no one spoke. The wind rustled through the weeds. The truck engine idled. Harold lowered his hand. Slowly. He looked at Miles, really looked at him. And in that moment, something long buried inside him stirred. Oh. He didn't say anything else. Not yet. But as the sedan pulled back onto the road and Miles turned to walk home alone, Harold knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was not the end of their story. It was the beginning. The road felt longer on the way back. Miles walked alone beneath a sky turning dark blue, the last strip of sunlight fading behind the trees. His breath came out in thin white clouds now. The temperature had dropped faster than expected. His stomach cramped again. Hard this time. He pressed a hand against it and laughed quietly. All right, he whispered. I get it. The styrofoam container was gone. His hands felt strangely light without it. Empty. But his chest felt heavy. Not with regret. With something else. The kind of fullness you don't eat. Each step sent a dull ache up his legs. The run had taken more out of him than he realized. His sneakers were damp, his socks thin. The backpack straps dug into his shoulders. A car passed him going toward town. This one slowed. For a split second, Miles felt his body tense, the instinctive tightening that came with being seen at the wrong time in the wrong place. The car didn't stop. It sped away. Miles exhaled slowly and kept walking. He didn't blame them. That was the part that hurt the most. The night sounds grew louder as the road quieted. Crickets. Distant dogs. The low rumble of a train far away. Miles counted his steps like he always did when things felt too big. 1, 2, 3. By the time he reached 100, the pain in his stomach had dulled to a steady ache. His mind drifted. He thought about his grandmother. About how she always waited on the porch when he was late, pretending she just wanted fresh air. He thought about the oatmeal that morning. How he'd poured all the sugar into her bowl and told her he wasn't hungry. He thought about the lie he told the old woman. I already ate. He didn't feel guilty. Not exactly. But he wondered if she knew. He wondered if she'd remember his face tomorrow, or if he'd just be another brief moment on a long road. When Miles finally reached the blue house near the tracks, the porch light was on. His grandmother was sitting in her rocking chair, wrapped in a thin blanket, eyes fixed on the road. The chair stopped rocking the moment she saw him. Miles, she said, standing too quickly. Lord baby, where have you been? He climbed the steps slowly. I was helping some people, he said. Her eyes searched his hands. No food. Her jaw tightened just a little. What people? An old couple. Their car broke down. She didn't interrupt. Miles sat on the steps and told her everything. The car, the cold, the food, the run. When he finished, his grandmother was quiet for a long time. Then she pulled him into her arms. Held him. Didn't speak. Miles rested his head against her chest and finally let himself feel how tired he was. Your mama, she said softly, voice thick, would have been proud of you. His throat tightened. I hope so, he whispered. They went inside. Dinner was beans and bread again. His grandmother made it feel like a feast anyway. She took smaller bites than usual. Left more for him. He noticed. Didn't say anything. That night, Miles lay on his mattress staring at the ceiling. His stomach hurt. But his mind was quiet. He touched the silver cross under his shirt. Mama, he whispered. I did what you taught me. Outside the train passed. Inside, a boy with nothing fell asleep feeling like he had done something right. 50 miles away, Harold Whitfield sat at a small desk in a quiet hotel room. His laptop was open. His phone pressed to his ear. I need you to look into someone, he said. A boy. Name's Miles Edwards. Monroe County. His wife sat on the bed behind him, still holding the empty styrofoam container. Harold stared at the wall as he listened. His expression changed. Slowly. He lives with his grandmother, he repeated. Mother deceased. Cancer. No father in the picture. Margaret closed her eyes. Harold swallowed. Top of his class, he continued. Free lunch program. There was a long pause. Yes, Harold said finally. That's him. He ended the call. Turned to his wife. That boy is exactly who I thought he was. Margaret nodded. He's like Daniel. Harold stared out the window at the dark road below. For 15 years he had searched for proof that goodness still existed, not in speeches or donations but in people. Tonight, he'd found it. And by morning he would make sure the world didn't overlook it. Miles woke up before his alarm. He didn't know why at first. Just a feeling. The house was quiet except for the ticking clock in the kitchen. Morning light crept through the thin curtains, pale and cold. His stomach hurt again. He rolled onto his side and pulled the blanket tighter. For a moment he wondered if the night before had really happened. The road, the car, the run, the food. But then he smelled oatmeal. Plain oatmeal. His grandmother was already awake. Miles sat up and rubbed his eyes. His legs were sore, the deep ache of someone who had pushed their body farther than usual. He shuffled into the kitchen. Grandma Ethel stood at the stove, stirring slowly. She turned when she heard him. Morning, baby. Morning, Grandma. She glanced at him, the tired eyes, the way he moved carefully. You all right? Yes, ma'am. She didn't argue. They ate in silence. Halfway through the phone rang. That almost never happened. Grandma Ethel froze. The phone rang again. She wiped her hands on a towel and answered it cautiously. Hello? Miles watched her face change. Confusion first. Then concern. Then something like disbelief. Yes, this is she, Ethel said slowly. No, he's fine. Why? Miles felt his chest tighten. She glanced at him. Who is this? She asked. A foundation? No, I don't know. She listened longer. Her free hand trembled slightly. I didn't give you permission to ask about my grandson, she said firmly. Yes, I understand, but still. There was a pause. Then, I'll think about it. She hung up. The kitchen felt heavier. Who was that? Miles asked. Ethel hesitated. Someone asking questions, she said. About you. About us. Miles' heart skipped. The couple? He asked. I don't know, she said honestly. They didn't say. Miles nodded slowly. A knock sounded at the door. Sure. Deliberate. Grandma Ethel stiffened. Miles stood. I'll get it, he said. She shook her head. No, baby. Stay. She walked to the door and peered through the peephole. A black SUV sat at the curb. A woman stood on the porch. Mid-40s. Professional suit. Calm posture. Ethel opened the door just enough to speak. Yes. Mrs. Edwards, the woman said gently. My name is Patricia Owens. Miles stepped closer. I represent the Whitfield Foundation, Patricia continued. I'm here because of something your grandson did last night. Silence filled the porch. Miles' stomach dropped. Grandma Ethel looked at Miles. Then back at the woman. Come in, she said finally. Patricia stepped inside and took in the small living room, the old furniture, the faded photo of Miles' mother, the careful cleanliness of a place that had very little. She sat at the kitchen table. Miles and his grandmother sat across from her. Miles, Patricia said, smiling softly. Do you remember the couple you helped last night? Yes, ma'am. They weren't just travelers, she said. They were Harold and Margaret Whitfield. The name didn't mean anything to Miles. But it meant everything to his grandmother. Her hand flew to her chest. Oh Lord. Patricia nodded. Harold Whitfield founded one of the largest investment firms in the state, she said calmly. He spent decades funding education and community programs. Miles felt dizzy. He's rich? Miles asked. Patricia smiled gently. Yes, very. Miles thought about the old man pacing beside the car. The woman shivering. The fried chicken. He ate my food, Miles said quietly. Patricia's eyes softened. That's why I'm here. She slid a folder across the table. Mr. Whitfield lost his son 15 years ago, she continued. He created a foundation to honor him. But he stopped believing he'd ever find someone who truly lived by those values. She looked at Miles. Until last night. Grandma Ethel started crying. Miles couldn't breathe. Patricia leaned forward. Miles, Mr. Whitfield wants to help you. Miles shook his head. I didn't do it for help. I know, Patricia said softly. That's why this matters. The front door opened. An old man stepped inside. Same face. Same eyes. Different presence. Harold Whitfield walked straight to Miles and knelt. An 74-year-old billionaire on his knees in a small kitchen. Miles, he said, voice shaking. You gave us your only meal. You ran into the dark for strangers. You refused money. His eyes glistened. My son would have done the same. Miles felt tears spill over. Harold placed a hand on his shoulder. By morning, he said softly, everything changed. The kitchen felt smaller with Harold Whitfield in it. Not because of his money. Not because of his name. But because of how quiet he was. He didn't dominate the room. He didn't take control. He stayed on one knee in front of Miles, like he was afraid to stand too tall and break something fragile. Miles, Harold said again, slower this time. I need to ask you something. Miles wiped his face with the sleeve of his hoodie. Yes, sir. Harold took a breath. If you hadn't stopped last night, if you had kept walking, would anyone have blamed you? Miles thought for a moment. No, sir. That's right, Harold said. No one would have blamed you. He looked at Grandma Ethel. Your grandson made a choice most adults don't. Ethel pressed her lips together, nodding through tears. Harold straightened slightly, still kneeling. And because of that choice, he continued, I want to offer you something. But before I do, I need to know something first. Miles' chest tightened. This was the moment where adults usually told him what they wanted. This time felt different. If someone gave you a lot of money, Harold said carefully, and didn't tell you what to do with it, what would you do? The room went silent. Patricia watched closely. Grandma Ethel turned to Miles. Miles didn't answer right away. His mind didn't go to toys. Or clothes. Or things he'd never had. He thought about his street. About the church roof that leaked every time it remembered how to rain. About Mr. Deacon's grocery store struggling to keep the lights on. About the library at school with more empty shelves than books. About his grandmother's medicine, how she skipped doses when money got tight. I would fix what's broken, Miles said quietly. Harold's breath caught. The school needs books, Miles continued. The church needs a new roof. And my grandma shouldn't have to choose between medicine and food. He paused. And I'd help people who helped me. Patricia's eyes filled. Harold lowered his head. That, he said softly, is exactly what my son would have said. He stood up slowly. Then here's what I want to do. Patricia opened the folder. The sound of paper sliding across the table felt louder than it should have. Miles Edwards, Patricia read, the Whitfield Foundation is offering you a full scholarship to any university you choose. Undergraduate and graduate. Tuition, housing, books, everything. Miles' mouth fell open. For your grandmother, Patricia continued, full medical coverage for life. Ethel let out a sob. And for this community, Harold added, a $5 million investment over 5 years. Miles felt dizzy. This isn't because you're poor, Harold said firmly. It's because you're good. Miles shook his head. I just gave away some chicken. Harold smiled through tears. No, he said. You gave us back our faith. But not everyone shared that feeling. Across town, in a luxury office overlooking the city, a man watched the same information come across his desk. Victor Whitfield. Harold's nephew. His jaw tightened. So, Victor said coldly, he found one. The assistant nodded nervously. A boy. 11. Victor leaned back in his chair. Prepare the car, he said. I need to handle this before it gets expensive. If this story is drawing you in, subscribing to Coziness Stories helps you enjoy more tales like this, every time you return. The black Mercedes didn't belong on Miles Street. It stood out immediately, glossy paint, tinted windows, engine humming softly like it had somewhere important to be. It parked slowly at the curb, deliberate, confident. Grandma Ethel noticed it first. She was watering the small garden out front when the car stopped. The hose slipped from her hand. Nobody with a car like that came here by accident. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, mid-30s, expensive suit, polished shoes that had never touched gravel for long. His hair was perfectly styled, his expression tight and controlled. He climbed the porch steps without hesitation and knocked. Firm. 3 times. Ethel opened the door cautiously. Yes. Mrs. Edwards, the man said smoothly. Victor Whitfield. The name hit her like ice. I'm Harold Whitfield's nephew. Ethel's spine straightened. What do you want? Victor didn't wait for an invitation. He stepped inside and looked around the living room, the old couch, the faded photos, the careful order of a house that had learned to survive on very little. His lip curled slightly. I'll be direct, Victor said. My uncle is generous. Too generous. And at his age, people sometimes misunderstand kindness. Ethel felt her heart pound. My grandson didn't misunderstand anything. Victor smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I'm sure you believe that. He placed a thick envelope on the table. It made a soft, heavy sound. $50,000? Victor said calmly. Cash. No paperwork. Ethel stared at it. That money is yours, Victor continued, if you agree to walk away. No interviews. No foundations. No more contact. Ethel's hands shook, not from temptation. From anger. You're trying to buy my silence. I'm trying to protect my family, Victor replied coolly. Public stories have consequences. And people who refuse to cooperate often find themselves overwhelmed. Ethel stood. Get out of my house. Victor's smile vanished. You have 48 hours, he said. After that, this gets complicated. He turned and walked out. The Mercedes rolled away. Miles came home minutes later. He found his grandmother sitting stiffly at the table. The envelope sat unopened between her hands. She told him everything. Miles listened without interrupting. When she finished, he stood up. He's scared, Miles said quietly. Ethel looked at him. Of what? Of losing control. Miles picked up Patricia's card from the counter and dialed. Ms. Owens, he said when she answered. Something happened. Across the city, Harold Whitfield listened to the same story. His face darkened. He came to your house? Harold said slowly. Yes, sir. Harold closed his eyes. That ends today. Victor Whitfield returned the next afternoon. This time he didn't come alone. Two men waited in the Mercedes. Suits. Sunglasses. Silent. Victor climbed the porch steps with the confidence of someone who believed the world bent eventually, especially when money was involved. He knocked once. The door opened immediately. But not to Grandma Ethel. Harold Whitfield stood there. Victor froze. For the first time since arriving in Monroe County, he hadn't planned this moment. Uncle Harold, Victor said, forcing a smile. I didn't expect. No, Harold replied calmly. You didn't expect to be caught. Victor's jaw tightened. Harold stepped aside. Come in. The living room felt different now. Patricia Owens sat at the table. A man in a gray suit beside her, a lawyer. Miles stood near his grandmother, silent, watchful. Victor glanced at the envelope still sitting unopened. I was only trying to prevent confusion, Victor said carefully. You know how stories get twisted. Harold closed the door. You threatened an elderly woman, Harold said evenly. You tried to bribe a child. Victor scoffed. I offered assistance. No, Harold snapped. You offered silence. The room went still. Harold stepped closer to his nephew. For years I ignored the complaints, Harold said. Families, communities, people you pressured because they stood between you and an inheritance. Victor's face paled. You don't have proof. Harold gestured to the lawyer. Yes, the lawyer said. We do. Victor swallowed. You crossed a line when you came here, Harold continued. This child represents everything you are not. Miles met Victor's eyes. No fear. No anger. Just certainty. I wasn't trying to win anything, Miles said quietly. I was just protecting my grandma. Victor looked away. Harold straightened. Effective immediately, he said, you are removed from the foundation board. Any further contact with this family will result in legal action. Victor's voice shook. You'd ruin me over a boy? Harold didn't hesitate. I would rebuild the world for him. Victor turned and left without another word. The door closed. Silence returned. Grandma Ethel sank into her chair, tears of relief streaming down her face. Harold knelt beside her. You're safe, he said. Both of you. Miles exhaled for the first time all day. The announcement didn't come quietly. It never does. Cameras lined the steps of Monroe County City Hall before sunrise. News vans idled at the curb. Reporters checked microphones, adjusted earpieces, whispered to producers. Something big was coming. Inside, Miles sat in a folding chair beside his grandmother, feet dangling just above the floor. He wore a button-down shirt that still felt stiff against his skin. You okay, baby? Ethel asked. Miles nodded. I just don't like all the people. Harold Whitfield stood nearby, reading over notes he didn't really need. He glanced at Miles and smiled. You won't have to say much, Harold said. Just be yourself. Miles wasn't sure how that helped. When the doors opened, the room filled fast. Cameras clicked. The mayor introduced Harold. Applause followed, polite at first, then curious. Harold stepped to the podium. 15 years ago, he began, I lost my son. The room stilled. I built a foundation to honor him, Harold continued. But somewhere along the way I forgot why. He paused. 1 month ago my wife and I were stranded on Highway 41. We were cold. Afraid. Invisible. He gestured to the side of the stage. Then an 11-year-old boy named Miles Edwards stopped. Miles felt his heart race as he stood. The applause was louder this time. He gave us his only meal, Harold said. He ran into the dark to find help. And when I offered money he refused. The room was silent. He reminded me, Harold said, voice breaking, that kindness doesn't come from wealth. It comes from character. Cameras swung toward Miles. A reporter shouted, "Miles, how does it feel?" Miles leaned into the microphone. "I just did what my mama taught me," he said softly. "I didn't know anyone was watching." The clip went viral within hours. Headlines spread. Boy gives away only meal. Triggers millions in community aid. 11-year-old restores billionaire's faith in humanity. But not everyone was cheering. Victor Whitfield watched from his office, fists clenched. "Don't let this end here," he muttered. Stories feel better when shared. Subscribe to Coziness Stories and join a space made for quiet moments and deep stories. Fame arrived quietly. Then all at once. By the next morning Miles' name was everywhere. On phones. On TVs mounted in grocery stores. On radios playing in passing cars. People who had never set foot in Monroe County suddenly spoke like they knew it by heart. Miles didn't feel famous. He felt exposed. When he walked into school, conversations stopped. Heads turned. Whispers followed him down the hallway like a breeze he couldn't escape. "That's him. The chicken kid. He's the one." Miss Taylor met him at the classroom door and pulled him into a gentle hug. "I'm proud of you," she said. Miles nodded, unsure what to say. At lunch, kids stared at his tray. One boy asked, "You really didn't eat that night?" Miles shrugged. It was okay. But it hadn't been okay. That night, he lay awake listening to the train pass, wondering if doing the right thing was supposed to feel this heavy. Outside the school gates, a different tension brewed. Victor Whitfield wasn't done. He didn't come with money this time. He came with doubt. Emails leaked. Anonymous posts appeared online, questioning motives, twisting facts. Was the story exaggerated? Was the family coached? Was this charity manipulation? Ethel saw the comments and cried quietly at the kitchen table. Miles read one message and closed the phone. "Grandma," he said softly, "people don't like it when they lose control of the story." She looked at him in surprise. "You sound older than 11. Miles smiled sadly. Across town, Harold Whitfield watched the same storm unfold. "They'll try to tear him down," Harold said to Patricia. "They always do." "Then we protect him," Patricia replied. Harold nodded. "Not with money," he said. "With truth." The press conference was supposed to be small. It wasn't. By the time Harold Whitfield stepped onto the stage at City Hall, the room was packed shoulder to shoulder. Reporters, cameras, microphones stacked like weapons aimed forward. Outside, a crowd gathered behind barricades. Some curious, some skeptical, some hopeful. Miles sat in the front row beside his grandmother. His feet didn't touch the floor. Ethel held his hand tightly, her thumb rubbing slow circles into his knuckles like she used to do when he was scared of thunderstorms. "Remember," she whispered, "you don't owe anyone anything." Miles nodded. But he knew that wasn't true. He owed the truth to himself. Harold cleared his throat. "My name is Harold Whitfield," he began. "And I'm here because of a boy who reminded me what integrity looks like when no one is watching." The room stilled. No big promises. No dramatic pauses. Just a man telling the truth. He described the breakdown on Highway 41. The cold. The fear. The cars that passed without stopping. Then he talked about the boy who didn't. "I tried to give him money," Harold said, his voice steady. "He refused. He told me kindness isn't something you sell." A reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Whitfield, some are suggesting this story was exaggerated for publicity." Harold didn't blink. "I am a billionaire," he said calmly. "If I wanted publicity, I'd buy it. I didn't. This boy bought my attention with character." Murmurs rippled through the room. Another reporter spoke up. "There are claims your foundation manipulated this situation for optics." Harold turned slightly, toward Miles. "Stand up," he said gently. Miles hesitated. Then he stood. Too small for the cameras. Too quiet for the noise. But somehow impossible to ignore. "This child," Harold continued, "has not asked for a single thing. Not once. Everything offered was initiated by us, after thorough legal and ethical review." Victor Whitfield watched from the back of the room. Sweat beaded along his hairline. He hadn't expected this. Then the moment came that changed everything. Patricia stepped forward. She held up a document. "Last week," she said, "an attempt was made to intimidate this family into silence." Gasp. Victor shifted. "This document," Patricia continued, "contains a cash offer and a coercive agreement. It has been notarized and submitted to legal counsel." Cameras swung. Victor took one step backward. Harold's voice hardened. "This is what exploitation looks like," he said. "Not generosity. Not kindness. Fear. Silence." Then one reporter asked the question no one expected. "Miles," she said gently, kneeling to his level, "why did you help them that night?" Miles swallowed. He looked at the microphones. Then at his grandmother. Then he said quietly, "Because they were cold. And I wasn't." That was it. No speech. No slogan. Just truth. The clip went viral within an hour. Not because it was dramatic. Because it was undeniable. By sunrise, Miles' face was everywhere. Phones. Televisions. Billboards. A freeze frame of him standing in City Hall, too small for the podium, eyes steady, voice calm, looped endlessly on news channels. Because they were cold. And I wasn't. Those 8 words became a headline, a hashtag, a quote slapped onto inspirational posts by people who had never skipped a meal in their lives. But for Miles, nothing felt inspirational. It felt loud. Too loud. The phone at Patricia's office rang non-stop. Producers. Politicians. Foundations. Influencers. Everyone wanted the boy. Everyone wanted the story. And everyone wanted a piece of it. They came fast. A children's book deal. A speaking tour. A viral commercial proposal with a 6-figure check. One email promised financial security for generations, if Miles would simply read a script on camera. Patricia didn't bring those offers to him. Not yet. Instead, she drove to Mon that afternoon and sat at the small kitchen table with Ethel and Miles, the same place where canned beans once felt like a feast. "Miles," she said gently, "the world is watching you now. That can be a gift, or a trap." Miles traced the edge of the table with his finger. "Do I have to do anything?" he asked. "No," Patricia replied immediately. "You don't owe anyone your voice." Ethel nodded firmly. "He's not for sale." Patricia smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." That evening Harold Whitfield called directly. Not through assistants. Not through lawyers. Just him. "Miles," he said, "I need to ask you something, and you're allowed to say no." Miles sat straighter. "What is it, sir?" "There are people who want to turn what you did into a brand," Harold said. "They'll praise you publicly while using you privately." Miles frowned. "That doesn't sound good." "It isn't," Harold agreed. "And I won't let it happen unless you want it." There was a pause. Then Harold asked quietly, "What do you want?" Miles didn't answer right away. He thought about the night on the highway. The cold. The hunger. The choice that hadn't felt heroic, just necessary. "I want things to be better," he said finally. "But I don't want people clapping while other kids are still hungry." Harold exhaled slowly. "That," he said, "is exactly why they can't own you." 2 days later, a private donor requested a meeting. Anonymous. Influential. Powerful. They wanted Miles to attend a youth leadership gala in Atlanta. Private jet. Luxury hotel. $250,000, appearance honorarium. All he had to do was stand on stage and repeat his story. Victor Whitfield's name wasn't on the invitation. But his fingerprints were everywhere. Patricia laid the letter on the table. Ethel didn't touch it. Miles read it carefully. Then he slid it back. "I don't want to do it," he said. "Why?" Patricia asked, not challenging, just curious. "Because," Miles said softly, "if I take that money, they'll say I helped because I knew it would pay off." The room went quiet. Ethel reached over and pulled her grandson into her side. "That's my boy," she whispered. Patricia folded the letter and dropped it into her bag. "I'll decline," she said. "Permanently." Not everyone liked that answer. Online comments shifted. Ungrateful. Being coached. Someone's controlling him. A few even said the words no child should ever read. Miles didn't see them. Ethel made sure of that. But Harold did. And so did Victor. "People don't refuse power," Victor muttered to a colleague. "Not unless they're dangerous." Miles wasn't dangerous because he was loud. He was dangerous because he couldn't be bought. A week later, Miles stood in the Mon Community Center. New walls, fresh paint, a place built from one quiet act. Kids ran past him laughing. A volunteer handed out meals. No cameras. No speeches. Just work. A local reporter approached gently. "Miles," she asked, "do you realize how big your story has become?" Miles thought for a second. Then he shook his head. "I just know I did one thing," he said. "And other people did a lot more after." She smiled. "That humility, that's what people admire most." Miles looked confused. "I don't want admiration," he said. "I want this to happen even when nobody's watching." The reporter lowered her camera. And for the first time since this began, she didn't turn it back on. The road didn't look the same anymore. Highway 41 still cut through Mon like it always had, but the abandoned gas station was gone now. In its place stood a low brick building with warm lights and wide windows. A simple sign out front read, "Mon Community Center built through kindness." Miles stood across the street, hands in his hoodie pockets, staring at it like he wasn't sure it was real. A year ago this was just asphalt and weeds. A place where cars sped past and didn't stop. This was where everything changed. Miles was 12 now. Still slim. Still quiet. Still carrying a notebook everywhere he went. But he stood a little taller. Not because he felt important, but because people looked at him differently now. Not with pity. Not with suspicion. With recognition. Inside the building, volunteers moved tables into place. Tonight was Friday. Dinner night. Miles stepped in and the familiar sounds wrapped around him. Plates clinking. Kids laughing. Someone calling out, "Who needs water over here?" No cameras. No speeches. Just people. Deshaun waved from the back. "Yo, Miles? We got 28 meals left." Miles nodded. "Let's make sure nobody leaves hungry." Across the room, Harold Whitfield sat quietly in a folding chair. No suit. No entourage. Just an old man watching kids eat. Margaret sat beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "He hasn't changed," she whispered. Harold smiled. That's what saved him from us. They had offered Miles everything. He had taken only what helped others. That was the part Harold never forgot. Mon changed slowly. Not all at once. Not perfectly. But it changed. The school library stayed open late now. The grocery store didn't close. The church roof stopped leaking. And something else shifted too, something harder to measure. People started stopping on Highway 41. Not every time. But more than before. A woman once told Miles, "I saw your story. Now I don't drive past people anymore." Miles didn't know what to say to that. So he just nodded. Later that night, after the last tray was washed and stacked, Miles and Ethel sat on the porch of their house. The paint was new. The steps didn't creak anymore. But the rocking chair was the same. Ethel rocked slowly, humming under her breath. "You ever think about how different your life could have gone?" she asked. Miles stared out at the street. "If I'd kept the food," he said. "Yes." He thought about it. "I would have been full that night," he said. "But I don't think I would have been okay." Ethel smiled, eyes shining. "Your mama would have liked that answer." Miles touched the silver cross beneath his shirt. "I hope she knows I tried," he whispered. Ethel reached for his hand. "Oh baby," she said softly. "She knows." Later, as the porch light clicked on and the night settled in, a car slowed as it passed the house. The driver honked once. Miles lifted his hand and waved. The car drove on. No applause. No spotlight. Just a moment. That was the thing about kindness. It didn't explode. It didn't announce itself. It moved quietly, from one person to another, changing direction, changing lives, leaving something behind. Miles Edwards had given away his only meal. What he received wasn't fame. It was proof that even in places the world forgets, even from people the world overlooks, one choice still matters. Thank you for spending this moment with Coziness Stories. Subscribe, rest easy, and I'll see you in the next story.